You can't create 1,000 high quality creatives a week. No, like it's not possible. There is this idea that came up already 2 years ago, which was the idea that creative is the new targeting. $5,000 a month on Facebook ads at the time. Within 6 months, we're spending $500,000 a month. Today, they're 90% automated.
Yeah.
Compared to 10 years ago. And it's missing context. And if it doesn't have data points, it's gonna make it up. So a lot of people end up being precisely wrong versus approximately right. Well, AI doesn't help you set the framework. You said the human set the framework. But if you give a very good framework and data to an AI,
all right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Brilliant Commerce Podcast, where I get an opportunity to sit down with some of the brightest minds behind what I normally say are iconic or next to be iconic brands. Joining me today is Vincent Bourzeix, who is not behind an iconic brand himself, but behind what I would like to call an iconic or next to be iconic agency, Superbolt. Vincent, thanks for joining me here today.
thanks for having me.
Normally my first question is, where do I find you today? Because more often than not, I do these remotely. But today, I know exactly where you are. We're here in Manhattan, New York City, where the World Cup is. One of the host cities is right here. And if my intel is correct, you may have been at the football match last night.
I was there yesterday at the Friends game.
Yes, congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah. So, let's not talk too much football, but let me get your bold prediction. France is considered one of the favorites. I don't want to jinx it for you. The favorite. Okay. No. We are not afraid of jinxing it. You're going for it right there. So good start to the World Cup for the Blue.
Good start to the World Cup. Don't want to get too much into the game of yesterday, but scary first half. Nothing was going on.
Yeah.
And they got the magic back in the second half. So
awesome.
Yeah, good prospect for.
All right. Well, congratulations. I'm excited that that's off to a good start. I'm also super excited. Been looking forward to this conversation. Like we had a chance to catch up last week. I've been a fan of Superbolt's work for a really long time. We've had some customers in common, but also just like agency in general. So I ran an agency for nearly 20 years, is what I said. And you started your agency in 2017. So you're coming up on that 10-year anniversary. But let's rewind the clock for just a sec. Before Superbolt, tell me a little bit about your background, your sort of history.
Absolutely. So before Superbolt, I was CMO of a direct-to-consumer company called Try the World.
Yeah.
We're in the food subscription box world. That was a very popular category. And the company grew very quickly. When I joined, we were spending $5,000 a month on Facebook ads at the time. Within 6 months, we're spending $500,000 a month.
Incredible.
So, very fast growth for the company. And because we're at the early era of these C brands and we had raised quite a bit of venture money, we'd build a team fully in-house to work on these new growth levers. And one of the core insights from that time, from an organizational design perspective, was that it was important to have in that team not only people with expertise in marketing and media buying, but we also had 2 designers, a copywriter, a front-end developer, and a data scientist, all working very closely together in that growth team. And the why behind that is that with the arrival of these new forms of advertising that were advertising on Meta specifically for that brand, you had access to a lot of data. For the first time, you were able to test a lot of variables. And so you needed both someone very good at the data side, someone like a team that was good at creating a lot of creative concepts, that was very good at understanding the evolution of these ad platforms that were moving very quickly. And then you wanted to ensure that you had the continuity of the user experience from the ad all the way to the website, from the first time they see you all the way to the conversion. So that was the role of the front-end developer. And so we saw this regroupment of expertise being very key. And in parallel, I became an advisor to earlier stage companies where it didn't make sense to hire a team of 10 people in-house.
Yeah.
So at that time, I looked at the agency landscape as an obvious alternative. And for these sort of, fast-growing, high-potential consumer brands, I found only agencies that tended to be either good at the media side or good at the creative side or good at the front end side, but not one agencies that have regrouped these expertise in a
Mm.
way that would holistically
Yeah.
approach
Vertically
the patrons,
integrated.
vertically integrated in the service of this, what became the core of the growth engine for these brands, which was the paid media side.
Yeah.
And so when the company I was at was about to be sold, I went to see 5 people that were working with me in the team. And I was like, hey, I have these brands that are asking me to solve that problem for them.
Yeah.
How about we do a sort of spin off of our team into an agency?
Yeah.
And really with sort of 2 big ideas, which was one, this idea of multi expertise teams. And the second point that I had seen being sometimes a challenge for these brands that were early stage is that they wanted help to, run the media campaigns, do the execution, create the creatives, but they also had a lot of questions.
Yeah.
They wanted a strategic partner, not
Yeah.
just an execution partner. And so that was the second pillar of Superbolt was like, we're going to bring multi-expertise teams. So we're going to be able to, we're going to be vertically integrated and able to help holistically, but also we're going to help advise on the growth strategy and be a strategic partner to the clients we work with. Because at this stage, often sort of like post-product market fit, but pre-scale, that's what they need.
I mean, that's fascinating. We didn't get into that sort of during the warm-up call, but I think back, like I started our agency, when was it? 1998. So back then, you maybe you were in school, but you certainly were running an agency. There was this, if you were an agency, it was this concept of waterfall. This was back in the days of like, you would design something to be pixel perfect, and that would be one agency that would do it.
Yeah.
And then you'd hand over the design to another agency that would ultimately program it. We thought that was sort of like fundamentally broken. So we had this like crazy idea to put product designers, they weren't even called product designers back then, alongside of front-end developers, and we would work in this way that was iterative. Let's sit beside each other, let's work through these iterations, let's cut down the sort of the feedback loop. And it felt so innovative at the time. Like companies just weren't doing that. They were so used to something that was waterfall. Like, we approved this design and now the design has changed. Like, how did that happen? We're like, well, as we were using it, we found opportunities to ultimately make it better. It seems like, you stumbled upon sort of a similar thing, and then you were able to work across an awful lot of brands to sort of bring that vertically integrated mindset to market. Is that fair to say?
That's super fair. And I think what it gives you, this recruitment of expertise, is speed of execution.
Yeah.
And I think coherence in the strategy. And so we saw that when you had, one agency that was doing the creatives, passing it off to one agency that was doing the media, when the two needed to be so integrated.
Yeah.
And the feedback loop between a team versus a feedback loop between 2 agencies, it's a million times
Yes.
better between a team.
Yeah.
And for me, that's why I was very obsessed with having the team in the office. And even to this day, where we're a bit more, we have like 20% of our team that's remote, but we're planning our on-site Wakonagate where everyone comes to New York, we spend time together, because I always had that belief that one thing that made our creatives so good was that, on Thursday at every week we have a happy hour, and the designers talk to the marketers, and they build a relationship. And because it's such a fluid relationship, we have like insights that are flowing very well in both directions. And that's really what make our creatives at the end of the day really good at the intersection of what works, but still being on brand, which is really hard to do.
Yeah.
And I really think it's this sort of flow that exists between the teams that makes that possible.
Yeah. And I think one of the advantages that agencies have always had is that when you do have an opportunity to work across a portfolio of brands, it's like you can share. It's not that you're necessarily sharing a playbook, but you have the ability to sort of like see what has worked across a platform. And I think sometimes when you're just working from within a brand, not having that perspective and just sort of like, we only know what we know. And so I've always found that being able to partner with agencies, whether I was in-house or whether I was the agency, finding that partner that understands your brand can really get embedded there, but bring that expertise and that perspective that you're just not going to have because they've been able to work across other domains, other verticals, and to see those channels emerging.
I think that's so important. And there is a lot of conversation around how much AI is disrupting the agency world.
Right.
And one of the things it is not disrupting is this portfolio view, or this much broader spectrum of understanding of what works for different brands, especially once you start building category expertise within the agency. And that can't be replaced by AI.
Yeah.
I think AI is replacing a lot of the execution that, when I was starting, in 2014, even in my previous role, there was a lot of manual work to be done. A lot of almost, sometimes I call it day-to-day trading.
Right.
It was a lot of day trading on the ad platform. It was always constant optimization because it gave you a lot of space to operate on the platform, but the optimization were all manual.
Mm-hmm.
Today, they're 90% automated compared to 10 years ago. So that's been changing a lot with AI, but that's happened over the last 5 years. Actually, that's pre-LLM. That's more like the machine learning ad products that Google and Meta came up with. Advantage Plus on Meta, they call it, Performance Max on the Google side, and so that's changed a lot the work we do on the agency side. But it's put more importance. We're talking about creatives a little bit. It puts more importance in the strategic partnership side and more importance on the creative side.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be these hype cycles for sure. The fact that AI is going to replace all agencies, AI is going to replace all engineers, AI is going to replace this, AI is going to replace that. And I think I have learned over time, you can't overreact to some of these things. I've been on this 3-week learning tour where I've been sitting down with companies, sort of understanding how they are using AI. And there is this, on the one hand, I'm hearing an awful lot, the pace is insane. We can barely keep up. And that it feels like there's an awful lot of individuals doing AI within the company, but very little sort of coordinated effort. And I sort of, being a strategic partner, I'm just curious, how you and the team are advising some of the brands that you're working with, how they might want to leverage AI to continue to keep them close to their customer, to continue to sort of put that emphasis on the creative diversity, which I've heard you say that I 100% agree with. And how do you advise them about how your team is using AI to sort of keep you closer together, to sort of not just fall into the trap of the hype cycle, but also not be super defensive of we're here because AI is not replacing us, but to sort of say, hey, we're learning new ways of working. Just would love to hear your thoughts on what that looks like.
First, I'll start with how we're using AI as an agency and what's our sort of philosophy around AI. So first, we're very much embracing AI. Since the beginning, we've been trying to find the ways it can help our teams drive more value for clients. And it hasn't changed the main areas where we think we can drive value. Again, it's this strategic partnership and the quality of creatives, because it's the biggest driver of performance, especially on creative first platforms like Meta. And there, on those two, AI can have a big role. On the strategic partnership, where it really helps us is in saving us time from a lot of the manual reporting and search for insights that we were doing. We're very proud historically as an agency, the quality of the slides we were doing, and the quality of the reporting we were doing. And it was really focused on driving insights for clients. And insights that were helping us to improve performance, but insights sometimes that were, to be given almost to the head of growth we work with so that they can pass it back internally for product teams, for finance teams. So we're very proud of that. But that took our team a ton of time.
Sure.
And the frequency at which we could drive great insights, it was once a month that we got a really strong insights. Now it's almost once a week because we have so much more firepower in analyzing data and in going into doing drill downs into hunches that we have. We could do 2 or 3 hunch a week before. Now we can do 10, 15 hunch a week if we want to. So it's very powerful. in helping us in strategic partnership. And it's a bit the same story on the creative side. So, you were talking about volume diversity. There was a lot of conversation, especially last year after a new algorithm on Meta was released called Andromeda.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, there is a big focus on this, starting from Meta, really, on this notion of creative volume and diversity. There is this idea that came up already 2 years ago, which was the idea that creative is the new targeting. Basically, you used to find people by giving Meta, the classics were other brands your customers might like, plus an age demographic, etc. So sort of like whitelisting groups of people. And what Meta is telling you now is like, don't give us a lot of parameters. We'll do it through the targeting, through the creative side. And so that came up 2 years ago. We've seen that being the most effective. And on top of that, last year, they released this new algorithm where it rewards new creatives. And at that point, there is almost an over interpretation of this where it became volume at all cost.
Yeah.
And it was a race on LinkedIn. You would see, 1 week it was like, I launched 50 creative this week. The next week it was like someone saying they launched 100. Next week it was someone launching 1,000.
Yeah.
And you can't create 1,000 high quality creatives a week.
No.
Like it's not possible. Or you're doing a change of like 2 words in the copy above the image, which by the way, Meta doesn't think is a diverse creative. It thinks it's twice the same creative.
Yeah.
And so I think there has been an overemphasis last year on volume. And what really matters is diversity. It's more having different concepts, different ways of telling the story of your product, different people telling the story of your product. This is why Meta is pushing so much creator content. I was at the Performance Marketing Summit that they did a couple months ago in San Jose, and it was all about creator content. Last year, when they were talking about the creatives, they were trying to show off their new AI tools to help your team create products from scratch. Not a word of this.
Yeah.
It's all about creator content. So I think there was an overemphasis, but even when you think about a very diverse set of creatives, it still takes a lot of time because coming up with creative concepts, it's very time consuming for the team. So now we have a sort of hybrid approach where we use a mix of AI generated concept, team generated concepts. Both are welcome to compete, but all of the concepts are finalized by our teams, and all of the final assets from these concepts also made by our teams. And again, our teams is using AI to augment themselves, including our motion designers, or graphic designers, or copywriters, but there is no replacement. And we have a few, we've written some AI principles, and one of the rules is like, nothing that comes out, no deliverable that we produce can be not checked by a human. Everything has to be human approved.
Yeah, we did the same thing recently at our company. It's like, this is an incredible thought partner, whether you're using whatever tool you're using. It is a thought partner for you, but you have to own your work. You have to own the output. And I think you said something at the beginning that was really important. It's like, there's no better indicator of success than the quality of the creative. And it's not, we can fall into this volume trap. And my bold prediction is that we are going to, as humans, if you think about the way you want to be marketed to, you want to have sort of a connection with the brand, you want to have a connection with the creative. That's what brings me back to this notion of like, an iconic brand is a brand that really knows its customers. It's a brand that can create a movement that you ultimately want to follow. And I just don't think a race to the middle of generic content or generic creative is going to compel me to want to be friends with that brand. But I want to know that the creatives behind the brand are like, their creative output is at next level, because they're always coming up with ideas. They're always working harder. They're finding those efficiencies, but I want that final product to be a product that really resonates with me. And I guess I'm curious how would you recommend that we balance out this idea of creative output? So like you're on the record in terms of diversity, and like the humans in the loop being the final arbiters of something that should be impactful. Um, if we're creating content that is like hyper personalized, how do you balance that out against the desire to create something that is viral? Because for me, virality is more of a community movement. Like we all saw the same thing. We're all excited about that thing. Um, yeah. How do you thread that needle?
I think, and you were talking about the both how to get something that is, I think, resonating with people, that is authentic, sometimes viral, but also personalization. And I think what we're what we're seeing is that the message from the brand needs to be authentic, needs to be one of the the best performing creatives we see for several of our brands are founder led ads.
Mm.
So ads where the founder tells a story,
Yeah.
and that can be made by that's like that's the identity of the brand.
Yeah.
Like you can't replace that. You can't have AI do like founder content. So I think what it tells me is like people still look for the authenticity of the message. To your point, where we see a lot of opportunity for personalization is in cases where we have, for example, brands with large portfolios of products, where we know that some products are better suited to certain people. There, we're going to look for a lot of personalization,
Yeah.
and we're really going to try to find the best, product to audience fit.
Yeah.
And so there, we're going to organize. That's even how we organize for some of our clients. We organize the campaigns around the product category, because we know that different categories of product will go after different people. And in this moment, we're talking about creatives as the targeting, like creatives as a big input for Meta. I think that's part of a broader concept at this moment in the evolution of the ad platforms, where Meta, the way they framed it, which I think is really interesting, is Meta kind of a revolution a little over 10, 15 years ago, when all of a sudden for last 200 years or so, you advertising was buying placements. You're buying an ad in a magazine, an ad in the subway in New York, etc. And you go from buying placement to buying audiences.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you don't have all of that waste of media, and you have a lot more possible attribution. So it totally changes the game. And now what they're saying is that we're in a phase where we're going from buying audiences to buying outcomes.
Mm.
So now you're basically not saying, I want to show ads to that person. You're like, I'm trying to sell those products with that return on ad spend.
Yeah. This is the outcome that I'm.
This is the outcome that I'm looking for. And for us, how we're sort of digesting that internally at Superbolt, we think about maximizing the performance of our client. What's the framework? It's high consolidation, high signal. So for a long time, the way to perform best on Google was this concept of single keyword ad group. So you would do one ad group per keyword. So it was extremely granular. And that was the way to win, like 5, 10 years ago. It was like extremely granular, detail-oriented optimization. It was a similar story on Meta. Highly fragmented, lots of control, lots of manual optimization. If you do this today, you have terrible performance.
Mm.
And that's because that's not how the ad platforms work anymore. Now, the ad platforms, they've become very smart. The signals that go in has changed. Like on Meta, there was a whole iOS 14. They get a lot of less purchase data. They adapt. They look at other signals that they have. And now the name of the game is to provide as much signal as you can to the ad platform. And the panic that there was a little bit in my industry 3-4 years ago, and when Advantage Plus arrived, Performance Max arrives, that's the Google side, everyone's like, oh, Meta and Google are taking away all the controls.
Yeah.
And it's all black box.
Yeah.
You don't know what's happening. And now these black boxes are evolving quite a lot. They're becoming a lot more transparent. And they're allowing you to give a lot more input, a lot more signal into them. So an example on Meta, for a while in those campaigns, you couldn't say like, I don't want to target anyone below 25. Now you can do some point it was called bid adjustments. Now it's this thing called value rules. It does the same thing. You can say, for someone below 25, I want to bid 80% as high as someone 35 to 45.
Yeah.
Okay. And on Google, they've done similar things. And now in the last Google Marketing Live, another example that's really interesting. Now for your performance marketing campaign, soon you're going to be able to give an AI brief. So you know how like on your Claude or ChatGPT, you can say, you tell a story of like who you might be targeting. Now that sort of blurb, you're going to put as an input on your ad campaign and sort of native language version. So we're going very much more and more towards that high consolidation and really high signal. And so today brands ask me sometimes, what can we do to improve performance? And to me, it's an area where it's like, look at your signals.
Yeah.
Like try to improve your signal. And people think about signal of like, is my pixel working?
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah.
You should.
That's table stakes though.
That's table stakes. That's very table stakes now. But you have all of these other signals that now you can provide, and that so impactful on performance.
But those signals now, like you're speaking my love language, because those signals require, that's where the hard work is.
That's right.
Adding a pixel to the site is not that difficult. And I think like as a commerce industry, whether it was 10 years ago or 12 years ago, we fell in love with this idea of adding a pixel, putting a bit of money into Facebook or Google and having audiences or customers fall out of the bottom. Like it wasn't all that difficult. And so we didn't make an awful lot of investments in our first party data, which is where I think a lot of the signals are. And to me, I think brands that want to optimize their performance, I love this idea of signal, is like, how can I coordinate the delivery of signal to these platforms such that they can do a better job? But like, that's my own sort of secret sauce. And we are going there. I don't think AI is going to necessarily do it for us. It can find efficiencies, certainly.
AI can leverage it,
yes,
but it cannot create it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think like just understanding that first party data so that we can augment those signals. That's one way. Like it's going to be a black box. It's going to come and go. But I think if we understand who our customers are and we understand how we can amplify those signals across those different channels, it is sort of a nice way of winning. I'd be curious. So you've talked an awful lot about Meta. Google has been thrown in there as well. Superbolt is known as one of the early, like you were one of the first agencies I think that was recognized as like a go-to resource by TikTok. As we shift into more of this like outcome-driven economy, when I think of these ad platforms that have their own incentives, they also want certain outcomes. How do you think about balancing the sort of like the impact across these channels so that you get the singular outcome you want for the brand while navigating these multiple channels? Tough question, maybe.
Yeah, it's a good question. And, one of the big topic since the beginning of Superbolt is this idea of channel diversification.
Yeah.
Because everyone feels like they're over-reliant on Meta. And when iOS 14 happened, everyone was like, we need to diversify. Because that's what, even if you think about a portfolio investment, like, that's what you do. Like, that's the rule.
Diversification.
Diversification is everything. And a lot of people feel like it's intuitive to look for that diversification in paid media. What's been hard is that the volume of ad placement, the quality of ad placement, and the quality of ad platform, there's been just two levels for a long time. There's been Meta on the what we call discovery side, Google on the intent side, and the rest of the world. That being said, at some level of, as you start scaling, I think you should diversify. When you're in, you're spending less than 100,000 for like a brand that has a sort of focused demographic and maybe 500,000 for a brand that has a broader demo, I don't think it's a good strategy to diversify. I don't think you should aim to diversify for the sake of diversifying very early. You can already now diversify within those platforms.
Yeah.
But at some point it becomes necessary and your next dollar is better spent somewhere else.
Yeah.
TikTok or Pinterest, depending on your product, your demographics.
Out of home podcast.
Out of home podcast, exactly.
Yeah.
um, what it brings at that point is a measurement challenge,
Yep.
because those platforms, they don't have the same measurement capabilities. So let's say you were advertising on Meta, all of a sudden you start advertising on Pinterest. Pinterest is not as good as Meta to attribute itself credit. And so all of a sudden, for a long time, you were looking at your return on ad spend within the channel, and Pinterest looks like 3 times worse.
Yeah.
And
It's because Google takes credit for Pinterest.
And anyway,
Yeah.
Google takes credit for everyone.
Yeah.
But it's at that point that it requires a conversation which is complicated about the measurement stack and really creating a measurement approach that is made to improve the decision making and separating the day-to-day decisions and the month-over-month decision. I think that's very important, because you want to keep looking at your ROAS on platform to make day-to-day decisions within Meta or within Google, because those are apples to apples.
Yeah.
And that helps you optimize that channel. But then you can't use that data in the same way when you're trying to compare more on a month-over-month budget allocation among channel. When you make your decision, should I still invest in Pinterest or not? You need to look at a broader set of signals. And if you compare Pinterest ROAS on platform versus Meta ROAS on platform, you're going to compare apples to oranges. So then you need to introduce triangulation. You need to start looking at your post-purchase data, for example. You need to start looking at your GA data, or if you have an MTA platform. And you start to triangulate and understand the moving pieces. But that's when data becomes a little messier to manage. And a lot of people prefer precision. And so a lot of people end up being precisely wrong versus approximately right.
Right.
And so that's one of the challenge. And then once you become a little bit more sophisticated, the way you can solve this, once you have more spend, doing incrementality experiments to help you calibrate your triangulated framework. But that's the hardest part. When you go into TikTok, when you go into Pinterest, you're talking about TikTok. We're one of the 51st badged agencies with TikTok. And what's funny about this is that one of the first things you get access to when you do this is like measurement partner credits. Because they know that the biggest problem that they're going to face is going to be measurement.
Yeah.
It's going to be TikTok's not going to get enough credit. And they sponsor, they pay 6 months of using this tool or that tool so that you can look at it as much as possible as an apples to apples with your other channels.
Yeah. Yes, they are tilting the scales in their favor, but that's interesting. So on measurement, so you sort of this idea of being precisely wrong. I'm on the record of sort of saying sometimes the LLMs, depending on how you ask the question, they can be confidently wrong. Yeah. And as much as looking at a dashboard and building dashboards can be inefficient, and sometimes you build them, people don't look at them. Yeah. I am of the opinion that dashboards oftentimes don't change their mind depending on how you've asked the question. And so because we now have all like super rapid access to answers, if we don't get the right answer, we can make decisions that can have a real negative impact. I mean, you're talking about dollars out. And so I'm curious, so understanding Superbolt's approach to QA, being vertically integrated on the creative side, you're also really well known for being very close to the data. I'm just sort of curious, what advice are you giving to your team to make sure that the same level of rigor that you apply to QAing the creative to make sure that it is going to work, in the era of AI getting us insights, are you applying the same rigor to making sure that the answers and insights that you're getting, it's not just how fast can we give them to the customer, how can we be sure that they are right?
I think one of the very important parts on how we look at data is how we've set up different tests that will enable us to extract insights from the data. Because a lot of people just sort of like, performance is up today, what happened? Or performance is down today, what happened? Oftentimes it's just nothing. Like nothing happened, nothing changed. It's just like if you're not spending a ton of money, like one day you're going to have 12 conversions, the next day you're going to have 8.
Yeah.
There's no insight there. It's just day-to-day sort of normal variation. This is noise. This is not signal. And so for us, what we spend time on is what we call quarterly learning roadmaps. A bit of a mouthful, but it's basically creating structured tests where we write. My background is engineering, right? So I like sort of good framework thinking and like protocols, like scientific protocol.
Yeah.
And so we for these tests where we're trying to test big assumptions. We do tests that are not over like days or weeks. Usually they're over like a month or two. Like it's sort of 4 to 8 weeks is the average duration for tests that we put in these roadmaps, and they're very well structured. And we define based on what we're gonna get in terms of data, based on the outcomes. Here are the set of actions that we will take. For example, we're talking about incrementality. If we're in incrementality experiments, this is usually the time frame that we have. And if you have a good setup up front on your test, then interpreting the data becomes all of a sudden very easy. And that's where AI is helpful. AI doesn't help you set the framework. You set the human set the framework. But if you give a very good framework and data to an AI,
it's going to do a great job.
It's going to do a great job at doing the analysis every day and do your, and so on a weekly basis, we give a little update on how this big test is performing to our clients. And that's written like 90% by AI. We check on it. But that's not where the value is. The value is
you have confidence in the setup. You have confidence in the quality of the data. AI is not going to come in and clean up a mess that you created accidentally. If you've got that discipline and you've got that really strong foundation, then I think you can look at the numbers more confidently. Is my understanding. Yeah,
exactly. And I think AI shouldn't replace. To your point on the dashboards, we shouldn't have AI do what code can do. Like, for us, we still have a data engineering team that uses AI to write code. But to extract data from platform, format data, organize data, and then have AI analyze the result of that data. But I think sometimes now AI is used to extract the data from platform and create the dashboards.
Missing context.
And it's missing context. And if it doesn't have data points, it's going to make it up.
Yeah. And so because it wants to give you an answer.
It will give you an answer.
Yeah.
That will happen. And it will say, it will be very confidently wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I find that over and over again. And sometimes it's like, well, it gave me an answer and I can squint at it like it seems reasonable, I guess. And I'm just going to pass this along without stopping for just a second, wondering like, my intuition tells me that can't be right, but the AI has to be right.
Yeah.
But it's not often right. So I think like just slowing down for a sec.
And I think we need to spend time on setting up AI for success. Like, we've been spending a lot of time digging over the years on how do we set up our team for success.
Yeah.
Right? Like big thing for us, and like growth paths and mentorship, etc. But to me, we have a lot of processes and guidelines and training documents. But for me, for AI, it's a bit the same. It's like, if you don't give AI a lot of context and a lot of like, what's your approach, how do you think about things, it's going to take to your point, the average way of thinking about this, which is not the way we think about this.
Right.
And so we've spent a lot of time in the last 6-12 months thinking about how do we set up AI tools that we use for success. And then once we've set up success at the company level, then it's how do we give those tools that are set up for success to the team.
Right.
So that also we try to move away from we have a few great AI people in the team, so we have a great AI organization.
Yeah.
Because the setup sometimes is not super intuitive.
Right.
Like we're not at the level yet in the sort of AI journey where if you're not a tinkerer, your AI output might be bad.
Right.
And you gotta want to be a tinkerer. Not everyone wants to be a tinkerer.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like if you're a growth marketing manager, you're interested in marketing, mix of creative and analytics. You might not be interested in AI technology and like how to set up prompts optimally and how to extract data in the best way possible. Like that's okay. And so it's a lot about setting the AI for success and then setting up people to use AI for success.
I mean, that is, I think more people need to hear that. Honestly, I think there's this feeling in the industry that whether it's in commerce or whether it's in adjacent industries, that everyone is doing AI and we're somehow left behind. And what I am hearing and what I am seeing firsthand when I spend time within these companies is that we're very early in that adoption curve. There's an awful lot of experimenting, tinkering that's happening, but not an awful lot of a coordinated effort to roll this out across the organization. And so you talk an awful lot about it. You're coming up on your 10-year anniversary of the founding of Superbolt, and you've been through multiple cycles or chapters as a company. So as you look ahead maybe to this next chapter, is it fair to characterize it as this, I don't know how I'm going to characterize it. I want you to, but is it, tell me like your vision for the next chapter and how it is AI enabled, and then how your customers and your brands are going to benefit from that.
I think, we're calling it AI native, AI enable. It's all same, but indeed the way we're seeing it, historically the company, the way we've positioned ourselves is like we're 80% a growth agency, 20% more operating like a consulting company. That's why the slides were good looking and the insight, like focus on insights, etc. And we saw this as like a way to represent our strategic partnership position. In the next version, we want to sort of double down on that. So we think, Superbolt will look 30% more like consulting, but also 20% like a tech company.
Yeah.
Because you need to build a function internally that's going to be good at leveraging innovation. And innovation mostly these days is characterized as AI, but I think you can expand it a little more broadly to like innovation. Like if you don't leverage innovation during that period, there is a high risk you're going to be left behind compared to other service providers in the same industry. And then we'll still like be, at least 50% like a growth marketing agency with basically the same approach we've had since day one, with that close like multi-expertise and focus on strategy beyond execution. But the 20% working like a bit more like a tech company is new. And to our previous point, we're at a moment which is still early in the AI era, and you're going to have a few tinkerers, right? But then what we've found is that you need to have a few people that work with those tinkerers. You need to have someone who's a process builder, who's good at then, the tinkering that this person has done works really well for this client. Can it work for 20 clients?
Yeah.
Like how scalable is that process? And then you need to have another person who's the piping expert. Like basically feeding it the right data is really hard. Mm-hmm. That's what we've realized is that, and it's a classic like bad input, bad output.
Yeah.
And figuring out how to give it exactly the right data is extremely important. Because for most of our reports that we do, we want to be like 99.99% accuracy. Like we don't have a sort of 10% margin of error that we can tolerate. And so that means that the piping has to be really, really good. And once you have these three people working closely together, we've seen that it accelerates adoption and makes the operationalization across the company possible. But if you only have one of the three, if you just have the tinkerer, it's never going to spread.
Yeah.
If you just have the process person, they're going to create processes that no one uses, which we've done before, by the way.
Yeah.
Like we've done that stage.
Yeah.
And it's a classic. I think a lot of people are stuck there. And if you don't have the right data in, you can have the tinkerer in the process, but people don't trust the data, and so no one uses it.
Yeah.
So if you don't have the three, it doesn't work. But I think in the future, you sort of need your agency to be, you have to be sort of, AI enabled. And to be AI enabled, you have to look a bit more like a tech company.
Yeah.
Part of the organization has to.
Turns out data is important. Always has been. No, but I think about the sort of like the through line for all of these different cycles or chapters that you've been through, that you've led the team at Superbolt through there. To me, the recurring themes are there's a curiosity. There's an honesty and rigor, and maybe that speaks to your engineering background, to what you all are doing. And like you continue to innovate, as opposed to chasing trends or sort of saying like, this is the channel. There's this really, what I've always appreciated about your work is there's this measured and honest approach. And even the way that you talk about AI and how transformative it can be there's a measured approach. It's a measured and honest approach. And I think that's the message that the industry needs to hear. This is exactly what I thought we would get out of this conversation. So probably a great place to wrap us up. You've left us with a ton of insight, and I really do appreciate you being in the hot seat with me today. This has been fantastic. Thank you.
This has been tons of fun. So thank you so much for the invite again.
Yeah, awesome. Anytime.